Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the stream and welcome back to everybody who's already been here. Guys, today I want to talk about tanking and I want to talk about. I had to help out a friend earlier today, and so I had a long drive, and I could have listened to music and relaxed and enjoyed myself, but that's not what I do. So instead, I downloaded some YouTube videos to keep up on, what's everybody else doing. Is there, I'm always looking for a lot of different things. Like one is where, is there any missing gaps in, YouTube and the content created. I find healer, it's really like myself and like C Unicorn. I think the only two people that do really healer videos, and I don't think C Unicorn does that many. So, I'm always looking for something, and then I'm also seeing where I can improve, right? So there's a lot of, not a lot, there's a decent amount of DPS and tanking videos, though, in general, of varying qualities. And, it's really, I think, for those who are talking about like optimal stuff and have a lot of knowledge of the game, I think right now it's mostly myself and Hyper are the two. And depending on who you talk to, like, some people I think would put Hyper in a tier unto himself because of some of the sweaty stuff, score pushing and other stuff they've done. And then there's a lot of others. TC Lee from the Tank Club still does some videos. I also was checking out some of his. I have to say, some of it seems I kind of want to watch some of it is part of what I want to do and look at it because some of it's outdated. But also the title here is very spicy. What name calling, false comparisons, and in-game toxicity. I do kind of want to talk about these things. In-game still has toxicity, and it has for a long time. And the only way that we can get it to stop is by pointing it out and then saying, hey, this is not acceptable, or in I think this case, kind of good behavior. And what we really want is for people to argue against the arguments themselves, right? We want to avoid name calling. We want to also avoid, and this happens in all games. This happens over on Path of Exile a lot, which just happens to be another game that I keep track of, but it happens with all games. And what someone will say, let's say I put out a build, and my build is like 95% optimal, okay? So it's missing 5%, but it's a pretty good build. What will happen is that some group of people that have 100% optimal builds, maybe they don't even play, but maybe there's somebody who does. They'll be like, Night Heroes builds are garbage because they're 95% they're bad. Here's how it's wrong. And they'll be like, they're garbage. If it's 95% optimal, is it garbage? Or is it maybe just not quite as good? Or in some cases, maybe there's a reason why they recommend other things that aren't optimal, which is a lot of my actual builds, right? Because I'm making builds for everybody. And while I try to point out what the optimal thing is, I recommend what's going to work for 99.99%, like most people that aren't score pushing. And the thing is that a lot of those people that are, score pushing and running the most sweaty groups, they already know all this stuff. So they don't need a video. And so that's one of the things that happens. And then what will happen is there'll be people that will put out videos that are just bad. Everything about the build could be improved upon. Everything about the build could be made better. And if people follow that build guide, they will have a genuinely bad experience at the game. And I think that is a far tier from the 95%. But what will happen is that you'll have this group of people that'll say, these are all horrible, terrible builds. Or these people don't know what they're doing. There's just name calling, basically, is what happens. And so a little bit I want to talk about today, and I'm going to pull up some video, and we're actually going to look at a few things of where this happens and how we can maybe get it not to happen. And I think that's part of what I want to talk about. And again, what I never want to do is like vilify anybody unless they really deserve it, but most of the time nobody does, right? And just have like a conversation about it. And again, remember that we can disagree and it can still be okay. All right, I have very sweaty friends that will disagree with things and I disagree with them, and we're still friends. Okay, that's okay. And the other thing is that we want to argue, generally speaking, against the argument. Now again, Hack the Minotaur has had on his website fake builds with fake parses. I have a serious problem with that. And why and how are they on his website? What's the deal? It wasn't through his main YouTube channel. It was somebody else, but he had them on their website. Was that somebody he employed? I don't know. But, Hack the Minotaur often has some builds that are pretty bad that he tells people are unkillable. And he's running around doing delves. And And I don't think that's probably really good if he tells people that and then they go into content where people are going to kick them out of group because they have a really bad build. And so I consider that to be, again, that lower tier that does maybe deserve some criticism. And, the thing is, again, I have seen, I don't know if it's consistent, and I tend not to trust somebody who's put out fake content before. Or supported it, right? Like I tend to have serious trust issues with that. But if, for example, Hack the Minotaur does seem like on some of his newer content that it wasn't that bad. Some of the stuff I've seen, historically, I've seen some really bad builds, but some of the newer stuff, my thing is that if he stops putting out content that is, and I'm using him as an example here, guys, please understand that we're trying to generalize this. I just think the specific examples help. It helps us understand this. But I think that if he stops doing that and continues to put out better content, I have no issues, right? And so, what a lot of people do is they'll put myself, they'll put Zynode, they'll put other people in this category and basically say that all of our stuff is trash. Obviously I have my own opinions about my stuff. I think it's good, or I wouldn't put it out, or I'd do something different. But, the thing with Zynode, just as a for instance, is that I think Zynode is genuinely trying to help people, and he's trying to help people where they're at. Now, we've had people in the Discord that will talk about a Zynode build like it will bend bars and lift gates, like it will do anything that, in the game and whatever, and that they've kind of talked a little bit nonsensical, to be totally honest with you, like said things that were mutually exclusive, like said they were spamming heals, and then said they were spamming shields, and then said they had a bunch of health on a thing that health would be detrimental because the damage scales off your health, and you're like, you're not doing all these things. I don't blame Zynode for that. I think that person probably has some issues that I don't want to make fun of them for. They seem to have some issues though, right? I don't blame Zynode for that. And I don't even really blame that person for that. That kind of stuff just happens. So not everybody who runs a build, it's not always the creator's fault if they come up with incorrect things. And I've also seen this, and we'll see this in a minute, but I've seen this a lot recently with Hyper, where Hyper, I think, did a video talking about explaining how damage works, and how when you use a damage shield and how block works. So when you cast a damage shield and you take damage, even if you're blocking, that damage shield gets affected first. So what you realize when you're tanking in ESO is that a standard raid boss, when they heavy attack you, will do probably on the middle to low end 150k ish damage. Okay, 150k. Most tanks have 40k health, so their raw damage is 150k. And so if you have a 10k shield, well, that damage goes from 150k to 140k. Doesn't really reduce it a lot, right? Here's the thing though, that your damage mitigation actually does subtract from that. Okay, so it's not 10k, it's 150k minus all of your non-blocking damage mitigation. And I'm trying to remember numbers for that. It's been a while since I've calculated it, but Lyria, I would love some liberty. So you have all of your normal damage mitigation, resistances, minor protection, minor aegis, class-specific buffs. There's probably more. Major protection. There's a handful, right? There's also things that reduce the boss's damage done to you. So things like, is it maim? I think it's maim. Minor maim will reduce their damage done. I might be calling it the wrong thing. There's a couple of buffs that reduce the damage done by 5%, or 5 and then 10, I think, respectively. There's a handful of buffs. All that stuff applies, okay? So that reduces their total damage. And oftentimes, I want to say you can get it pretty high. Like 30, it's 70% of the damage done, you can get it done. Maim and cowardice. Yeah, cowardice works a little bit different. Where Moogle, that's also a great point. Could be something else, but all that's subtracted. So you still end up with, depending on the fight, you might still end up with a good chunk of damage. Maybe it's enough to one-shot you if you're not blocking. Typically, that's true, right? Most heavy attacks you have to block. So then you're thinking, well, it probably still does 40k. So just depends on the trial, depends on the boss, how much damage they're doing, etc. But let's call it 40k, just for argument's sake. Now, if I put on a 10k shield, I reduce the damage from 40k to 30k. Okay, and then if I block mitigation can get up quite high. And if you get it to cap, you're going to block most of that damage if it's something you can block. You can't block damage over time. I feel like I'm getting super in the weeds here, and I'm wondering, I'm just going to check YouTube. So far, we haven't lost anybody. Okay, all right. You guys let me know if I'm getting too in the weeds on this stuff and if I'm losing people. So that shield, it is affected before a block is counted in. And what's the block cap? Does anybody remember off the top of their head? It's really not that important, so I usually don't remember what it is. It's high, 80%. Does it go up to 90? It's a lot. It's a lot. So you're getting another. So if you just take that damage from the shield, it blocks 10k. You still take 30k. You block that. Let's say it's 80%. No, let's say 75, just for ease of math here. So 75% of 30k reduce, meaning that we're taking 7,500 damage. Okay, just to make the math easy. So we took 705 damage. Now, if we didn't use that shield, we still blocked. Instead, what we would get is 1,000 damage that we would take. So that's 250. Now, that's significant, but basically shields typically aren't as good. I'm retired from ESO. I'm just here to listen to whatever you're chatting about. All right. So you see that like that shield, even though it's 10k, actually only effectively blocks 2,500 damage. Okay, so those are the two different situations. So damage shields, even though it says 10k, is not as good. Now, what a lot of people have done is they've looked at that and they've gone, the takeaway is like, you don't want to shield do heavy attacks, and that, in theory, is a fairly decent piece of advice. Hey, what's up, Walter? How you doing, man? Yeah, she did, man. It's been like a year. Now, here's the actual situation. For all tanks now, just about all tanks, you don't really... So all tanks now have a shield that they can use. It's a scribing shield. 91%. Okay, it's possible. Okay. Yeah, you can get to cap. There's a couple of skills you can do that'll get you to cap. 91%. I knew it was really high, but I didn't want to overstate. But most of the time, you're going to use warding contingency now. Warding contingency, in addition to being a damage shield... This character is naked, by the way. That's why these values are a little bit lower. It also, you choose to reduce your damage taken for your second option. It's Gladiator's Tenacity, and it reduces your damage taken by a further 8% for 6 seconds. And if you need it, it also gives you minor protection. This is the shield most people are using now. So if you're going to take a heavy attack, shielding before you do will further reduce your damage by another 8%. That alone makes it worth it. The true situation is that you want to shield before when you're expecting damage, and you want to heal once you've taken damage. And that doesn't matter if it's a heavy attack or if it's damage over time. Now, once you're taking damage over time, blocking doesn't do anything. So you want to make sure that you shield. And that'll be a good way to eat up that damage over time. Healing is also fine. But what people have done is they've gone, you don't want to shield before a heavy attack because it doesn't do that much. Well, that's no longer true, because now you want to make sure you have warding contingency up for the Gladiator's Tenacity. Also, it still reduces the damage, and it's better than being reactive. Even though it's only a couple of, 2.5k versus 10k like we looked at, you could argue that, yeah, a heal would be better, because a heal will do about the same amount as a shield, but you'll get the full benefit. The thing is, you can shield before damage comes in. So that's one way that someone can misunderstand what a creator who is correct is saying whenever they're kind of getting a little bit more sweaty or getting into the weeds on all this stuff. Okay, that's actually not what I wanted to talk about. That's not the main purpose of today. Let me pull up real quick. It's going to take me just a second. Pull up a video here. Sign into YouTube. And I have a sign in for YouTube that I use just for watching these kind of videos. And I think it'll help us to be able to talk about some of this stuff. YouTube is being very secure. We're doing two-factor identification real quick, so let me just do that. Arcanist tanks kind of prove that shielding can kick butt in dungeons. I'm a trial noob, though. There you go. Another case of people took the idea. What he said is right. It's just that what you want to do based on that, I've heard people a lot of times think that you shouldn't be shielding before heavy attacks. And again, that's just objectively not true. All right. Let me pull this up. I think we're good. Thank you so much, Mrs. Harrow. So what I want to do now is I want to take a look at a couple of videos by some other YouTubers. And again, what we're going to try to do here is we are going to talk about we're going to talk about the arguments. We're going to argue against a thing, not against a creator. As you know, just because someone recommends something wrong doesn't mean they're bad. Okay. If all of the content someone does, or someone routinely makes content that is not good, then maybe we could say this creator isn't particularly good. For example, again, kind of naming names here, but that's not the point. Outcast. Outcast has the best SEO in the game, and Outcast builds get pulled up all the time by new players. We all know this, but everybody who plays ESO for a decent amount of time, not everybody, but I hope most people, learn that Outcast builds are years out of date. Absolutely years out of date. And you know, you don't want to be recommending someone go to a site where the builds are years out of date. That's not going to be good. And the reason it's I consider it like really bad, it's not just like, oh, this person's trying, is that they're never trying to like actually help people. And if people go to that site, they're going to have a bad experience. And that's what I don't want. I don't want people to have a bad experience playing games, because I want them to have a good experience playing games. My green screen here. I got moved a bit. I think let me see here. Let me catch up on chat. Out of curiosity, does blocking trigger contingency, or do you need to use an ability? You need to use an ability where Moogle roll dodging works. So that's actually, if you want to be really sweaty, let me just show you real quick. You can hit it and immediately have it go off. So normally you hit it, and then if you hit it again, you know, or cast some other skill that costs, it'll go off. But that's actually one way. If you're really sweaty and you're really experienced, you can hit it and then roll dodge to get the shield immediately and the buff almost immediately, because roll dodging, for those who don't know, is what we call off global cooldown. Could you see that okay on the screen? I know it's a little bit small there. And then let me catch up on the rest of this. I think abilities and dodges trigger contingency. Yeah, there you go. I think it has to have some sort of cost typically, or be an ability. I forgot what it actually says. Cool. Outcast builds are incredibly out of date. They were decent way back, but not in a while. Yeah, and it's been like 4 or 5 years at least. I was like, wow, the game's changed in the last 18 months. We no longer want to shield before a heavy attack. Well, I think that is what the takeaway from what most people have from Hyper's video. Was that his point? I'm not entirely sure. I don't recall. But what I really want, the thing that got me going on this a little bit is this video right here, because I was listening to see what everybody else was doing.
In this video,
let me pause here. Let me switch maybe back to this format. I think this will work well. Walter says I'm joking. Okay.
I'll teach you everything you need.
So we're gonna jump ahead to something that was said here, and you know what? I probably should have. Let me pull something up, another thing up while we're at it. Let me see. Oh, this one's also this is another one that I watched that was. I would say in general, if we were comparing two people, and again, guys, we're comparing ideas here. I have found that Hyper does generally very good videos, and I mostly agree. And the stuff that we typically disagree on, sometimes one of us might be wrong, sure. But typically the only issue that I find is like I'm recommending stuff that I think is better for 99.99% of people. And I think Hyper has said that he's like, just do what the best tanks in the game do without, he doesn't say this, but the implied is in optimized group, in perfect conditions, and what have you. And I just don't think that that's good advice for people. I try to help people where they're at. And I feel like once you get to the highest top tier thing, I think his videos are great for that. And that's usually where we disagree. It's usually not a question there's usually not serious disagreement though. Tank Club here, I watched this video and it was made in 2024, and then he like updated the title to be for 2025. I don't think he's up on what is going on in ESO, if I'm being totally honest. And I say that, what I just want to be very clear. I have been in Discords with TC Lee, who's the guy from the Tank Club, and I can't think of any bad experiences I've had. And in fact, I've mostly had really good experiences. I have been in Discords with Hyper, and I have had a lot of bad experiences. And I've had a lot of toxicity stuff that if I showed you guys, you would be like, wow, that's crazy. And not all of it can I attribute to Hyper. I don't know, how close he is with these various people, but a lot of toxicity. And so you would think by that I would have a lot of negative things potentially to say about Hyper and a lot of positive things to say about TC Lee. It's not about the people. What I'm discussing right now is the actual builds and their advice. And I find personally that the Tank Club right now is giving some very questionable advice. Not all of it. I think he's still trying to help too. That's another thing. I think very much TC Lee is always trying to give people good advice, but I tend to find Hyper's advice better. And again, my personal leaning, right? If I was going with my personal feelings, would be that, would not be that. So I'll just say that. And then let me just see Night Hare Gaming, and we'll just go tanking. See if it pulls up what we want. This is what we want right here. All right.
Hey everyone,
and then I'm just going to pull something, just going to get to a place. Okay, cool. Just a placeholder here. So we're looking at Hyper's video, ESO. Where'd the title go? ESO, Beginner Tanking Guide, Basics, Build, How to Start, Tips. Hyper recently put out several solo builds that I like a lot, but you're 100% right about his tank/trial builds. They're overly optimized for someone like me. Yeah. So... yeah, let me jump here. We're gonna go to 23 minutes. I stopped this when I was listening to it, and so that's why. Let's just listen.
Complete any content using any race, and there are people completing
Here we go.
Mundus or protective jewelry traits, but that's sacrificing a lot just to hit the armor cap.
Best race choices. Let's just go all the way back. We'll start at the beginning of this section.
Moving on to race choice. Sadly, racial bonuses in ESO are pretty significant when it comes to PvE tanking, and you'll be putting yourself at a disadvantage by not choosing Nord. You can complete any content on any race, but you'll have to put in more effort and adjust your build. Nords have a racial that grants them 2600 armor, which translates to a 7.28% damage reduction when close to armor cap. Of course, you're not supposed to just take it and accept taking this much more damage. What you should do instead, as a non-Nord, is adjust your build and get more armor from somewhere else, such as for example using the Lady Mundus or protective jewelry traits. But that's sacrificing a lot just to hit the armor cap, which is why Nord tanks always end up with better sustain, even though they don't have sustain racials, because they can devote their Mundus choice and jewelry trait choices towards sustain. You should play how you want, you can complete any content using any race, and there are people completing hardest content even as Argonians.
Cool. So far, generally speaking, don't have any issues with this. I wouldn't ever recommend doing these two things, by the way, if you're not at resistance cap, but don't have any issues.
But at the same time, anyone telling you race choice is insignificant is clueless about the game.
Okay, anybody tell you that race choices is insignificant
Arcanists
is clueless about the game. This is the thing that I really have
are an exception to that.
an issue with that. Oh, okay. Let's listen on.
As due to the huge amount of armor they're getting from their class passives and abilities, choosing Nord isn't as crucial. They're still technically the best race, but the gap between them and other races is insignificant. Now attribute.
I think Walter's just here to troll. Walter, it's good to see you, man. It's been a while. So the takeaway there was, I think we're done here. It's getting on to the next thing, is that like Arcanists are the exception here. Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. Race choices is insignificant. Yeah. So anybody who says race choice is insignificant is clueless about the game.
But at the same time, anyone telling you race choice is insignificant is clueless about the game.
Okay. So since there's some name calling here, since there's a bit of like, I feel like it's name calling, right? Like if anybody doesn't know this, they're wrong. Okay. And then he suggests using protective on your jewelry or Lady Mundus. So if we hop over here, I have, this video is old. So that his video was like from 3 months ago. This is from a year ago. Okay. This is how you get to resistance cap, guys, on any race. It doesn't matter what it is. You'll notice here, this is from my own video, right? So I'm just pulling it up because it has everything outlined for you very clearly where you get it from, and it shows you how to do it. So a couple of the ways you can do it is, one is having a defending trait on your front bar, which will give you 3,200 resistances, which is way more than a Nord will give you. The other way that a lot of people do is having a 2-piece set bonus that gives you resistance. And let me actually just show you, assuming ESO didn't kick me out. I don't think it did. Let me just show you exactly where that comes from. And we'll go to Ice Staff or Destruction Staffs. Yeah, Torque's packed here. You get 14,870. I think this is gold. Is this golded out? I can't tell gold from green in game, but I think it's gold. So that's another 1,500. And then if we look at a Nord, we see that we get 26k resistances, right? So less than defending is what we get from Nord, but it's more than running a piece of defending on our front. It's gold. Okay, thanks. So that's the max. That's the max amount we would get. So those are a couple of ways that we can get the same buffs that he's talking about, but we can get it from in-game. You can also change around CP. This Lady Mundus, I recommend this only if you're running, you can't see it on the screen, medium or light armor. I would never recommend that as a just a normal build, okay? I just wouldn't do it. Also, you want to run 7 pieces of heavy. He's still recommending, I believe, 5-1-1 or 6-1. There is no reason. The reason people used to run it was for the Undaunted passives to give you more max resources. That changed like 3 years ago when the new trials, most of them do dot damage, and a lot of the newer stuff scales off your max health. And so having more max health used to just be objectively good, and it's no longer. Okay, there was like a point where like, well, you don't need more, so why get more? There's better things to do, but it was still fine. If you could get more health, you were like, sure. Now it's like, actually on some fights, you want to have low health. So here's the thing. Why is he saying this? Why is he saying that people don't know anything about the game? Does he not think that those? I think it's because he doesn't know. I think it's because he thinks that getting Protective or Lady Mundus is the only 2 options. I don't think he knows about defending. I don't think he knows about. I don't think he's like thought about it, or he just immediately discounted it, even though there's really not much of an argument for having a better, thing on your front bar. And I also don't think he's thought about the fact that you can back bar most sets and run a 2-piece bonus on your front. I think that that's what it is. And he's name calling and saying that people don't know anything about the game if they don't realize this. Now, a lot of people will, I know there's going to be some hyper fans. I didn't, no pun intended, but I guess it's there. There's going to be some like people that are just, and people do this with me. They do it with everybody, guys, where they're just like, no, Night Hero is always right. I'm not always right. I can be wrong. Hyper has for a long time passed the point when it made a lot of sense. He was still thinking that people couldn't get minor breach from your wall of elements. Ice Wall of Elements has given minor breach for quite a while, and he didn't realize that. And I know that because he said it in one of his videos. He said, hey, I didn't know and I learned this. Okay, that was something he learned. Another thing he didn't know about that he had to learn was that using elemental susceptibility with an double ice staff, exactly, Lyriel knows, I'm often wrong. If you use a elemental susceptibility with an ice staff and you're in a trial, you will keep up minor brittle 100% of the time if multiple tanks are running it. That's all you need. I know because I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I don't know if this will work. And I asked some friends and they're like, oh, it works. We're already doing it. Okay. So I was skeptical and I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. And they had to show me. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. He didn't know that for the longest time. And then somebody that we both know asked him or mentioned it to him in one of his videos and he learned about it. Okay. We're all infallible. We can all be wrong about things. We can all make mistakes. Another thing, and this happens so much, is that, man, you want to talk about Nightblades? I don't try to be the Nightblade guy. I know Night Hero, Nightblade, it makes sense. That Nightblade is my main, but I'm not like I don't play them. I play all the other, most of the other classes more than a Nightblade now. But if you go to a Nightblade, for the longest time, I mentioned it to him in one of his videos. He was saying that Nightblades aren't good because they have no burst heal. And that's just not true. They've always had a burst heal. They just didn't know what it was. And it seems like TC Lee has now repeated that, I assume because he heard it from Hyper. And so I'm on my healer build right here. Actually, it'll work on a healer build. So the burst heal you use is offering. I would not recommend healthy offering. I would recommend the other more for a tank. This is my healer. So you'd run shrewd offering, but that is your burst heal. It's actually just as efficient as a warden's heal, which for the longest time, and I think still, was the biggest and best heal in the game. Now the thing is that warden, it does 3 times the healing, but if you talk about magicka cost to actual healing done, they're basically the same. And so they do have a burst heal. They've always had a burst heal, and these guys just didn't know. My point in all of this is not to hate on Hyper. My point is that there are things that he does not know, and there are things that he has discovered. This suggesting that the only 2 ways to get to cap whenever you're talking about, resistances is by, somehow using the Lady Mundus, giving 4,000 resistances, which is crazy more than you would need, and also like not realizing that defending or having a 2-piece bonus on your front bar is or options, and that much better. I would never go protective on my jewelry over infused. It's crazy. And so my point is that like there are things that he doesn't know, and I think that this is just another case of that. And we shouldn't be saying that people, I don't know. If it's me, I don't typically want to be saying that people don't know anything about the game if they don't understand something, when I have clearly shown that I don't understand things a decent amount over time. Okay. And that's really the point that I wanted to get at today. And just to show like there's objectively ways of getting to resistance cap with it aren't. And the reason, you know what, if we want to talk about race, Nords are great. Nords are absolutely, they're good. They provide that resistance. They also provide ulti, which is really nice. And it's really important historically if you were trying to permanently Magma Shell on a Dragon Knight, because you could barely get enough ultimate on a Dragon Knight if you wanted to run a really sweaty build where you permanently Magma Shell in group content. That could make sense. Most people that I know, 99.9%, are much more interested in running. They want to see a tail. I mean, Mother Clucker, for example, loves Argonians, and they want to see a tail. And so they run, this, I could go down here, this Nightblade, one of my Nightblades has a tail. Probably several of them. I run them in, Dreadsail Reef. And people do that all the time because they like the tail. They want to see the tail. And that's much more important to people than being maximally optimal. Now, if we want to talk about this more, and I'm sure there's some people that probably do, I don't think I want to go too much more into it. One of the things that it will save you, or that it can save you on those various classes, is that you can instead run different CP. Now, that might provide you with a significant damage bonus. Having a free red CP and not having to choose from your red CP to run something. Let me see. Yeah, so like on my DK, you can see I'm running Shield Master, Ward Master, Expert Evasion, and Spirit Mastery. Sustained by Suffering would also be great. Those are significant benefits. And if you're not doing that, if you're not on a Nord, then you probably need to run Fortified. Okay, so it's significant to be able to run something that might reduce your damage done by 10% while blocking. That's significant. That's something that is important. Absolutely. I can still tell you that by the time that 10% might matter, it's not going to. Okay, it's just not gonna. I mean, have everything else. It's just crazy to me that you would care. Most people care much more about their race, what they want to look at. If you don't choose Nord, it's a great option. Here's another thing though. The actual best tanking race in the game isn't Nord, and it isn't Imperial, and it isn't any number of things. I'm just going to show you here. I'll probably have to delete a character, but we'll do it. Does protection jewelry really hurt that much? Since as a tank, you're not running bloodthirsty and infused, won't too much. Potion cooldown is nice, and an an Argonian tank, but not sure what else is great. The potion cooldown, Robert, I have tried it. I have tried it on a Nightblade, which would benefit the most from it. Argonian running potion cooldowns. I tried it in veteran a hard mode Dread Cell Reef. It's honestly, it's not. It's fine. It works just as well, I guess. I've also done it on an Argonian take, running a Nightblade with a potion reduced cooldown, running the healer CP that gives you 75% reduced cost of heals for however many seconds after drinking a potion. I forget what it's called. We can pull it up in a second. And it's fine. A lot of times you don't need all of that recovery that you're going to get from it, so some of it's wasted. But also, it's fine. I wanted it to be great, Robert, and it just wasn't. I recommend infused typically. And so you want to run infused because infused will give you that reduced cost, and that's significant. That's enough that I think I really do think it's important. So that's why I wouldn't run protection. Robert, it will work. It will work. Ghetto says use a Breton. I think a Breton is a really good option. I think that would also work really well. Man, I wonder if this character has anything important on him. I don't know, but we're going to delete him. And the reason I'm going to delete him is because I want to show you something. We're going to pretend to create a character. Let me show you. Oh, does it not show you the racial passives? Oh my God, it doesn't. Oh well, we'll pull it up. Yes. Where Moogle has it. A red guard is the way to go. And the reason for that, oh no, did I close? There we go. The reason for it, let me see. ESO classes and then, I'm sorry, races. What am I doing? And then what is it? ESUP? Is that what it is? We'll pull it up. Redguard is the best race for a tank, and the reason for that is because Redguard will give you back stamina while blocking. Okay, and that is absolutely huge. You can get back 1,000 stamina every 5 seconds on a Redguard while blocking. You guys can't see this very well. Let me switch over there. There we go. You still can't see it very well. Let me see if we can. Hey, there we go. It's gonna be huge. All right. You can restore 1,000 stamina while blocking. Most new tanks, and I'm with you, Ghetto. I also think that a Breton is also very good. But for most tanks, being able to restore stamina while blocking is the most important thing. And that is still true when you're doing Kind's Aegis hard mode, okay? Because you just have to hold block on that fight. Now, you could argue that, oh, well, on Rockgrove and Dreadcell Reef and Lucent Citadel, that's not true. Okay, but Kind's Aegis hard mode is still one of the hardest fights on a tank, and this will still give you a benefit there as a tank, okay? So this is a big deal. Yeah, Ghetto is also, we can look at it, Ghetto. That's a good point, all right? The whole idea, though, that, and again, my point in this is not, I don't want to die on the hill that any particular race is the best. We can agree that some of these are bad and some of them are good. So 7% cost reduction, that's going to be pretty huge. And also getting the Magicka, it's Magicka Recovery, right? Or is it just, yeah, Magicka Recovery as well. That's great. Imperial also gets reduced cost. My point is that there are other things that you can do that will give you just as good of a benefit. And that is really my point. And the idea that, you don't know anything about the game if you don't choose the thing that I'm telling you is right, when I clearly don't seem to, there's been things that we've shown, like four things that were, so we had the Wall of Elements providing Minor Breach, the Elisus providing that Minor Brittle, so you don't need a skill for it. No matter what class you're on, the Nightblade having a burst heal, and I think there was one other thing. Those are things, it's okay. I'm not trying to hate on him, except for the fact that he says, if you don't agree with me, you don't know anything about the game. And I don't think that sort of, I don't know. I guess if it was me, I just wouldn't be saying that people don't know anything about the game if they don't know something in particular, when I know for myself that there's things that I don't know about the game and that I've continued to learn. Okay. And that's really, we need to stop this sort of behavior. And we also need to stop the false equivalencies. A lot of people that are, used to be in certain discords with people that don't even play the game anymore, used to just hate on me, guys. They still do. It's funny because they still do. I have friends over there that will like. I've just asked them, or they've told me because there's something funny, and it's. I literally think it's funny. People will send me screenshots every once in a while, and I just laugh about it. But those we just have to say, hey, this is not acceptable behavior, and if you change your behavior, that's fine and you're welcome in. But if you don't change your behavior, this is not acceptable. And we have to say that and this is not that bad. Okay. I'm talking about the stuff in the discords gets pretty crazy. And I'm not talking about someone venting. I'm not talking about having a frustrating or bad day. I'm talking about like really putting it out there. So um let's catch up on chat and then maybe we'll jump over and take a look at a few other things. Um Redguard Nightblade with siphoning strikes, OP. Weremoogle, I actually thought about trying it just because I think we could perma block and never have to let go of block. Exactly, though, Weremoogle. That's what I'm talking about. The Redguard Redguard Nightblade with siphoning strikes would be crazy. What makes EO so great is so many options. Yeah. Walter says again, I've been out of the game for a while, but always felt it was important to be able to achieve certain benchmarks, and how you got there didn't matter. Yeah, I think generally that's true, Walter. Let me have a bit of tea. Only because I can see the. Robert Miller says the only bonus I can see to building the way he mentions is that all your tank characters can share gear versus using various races and having no specialized. Kind of like that, Robert. You can change CP on your individual characters to adjust for that. And you also, if you never have any red or any Nords, then you're also fine. But yeah, it is a benefit that could be useful for sure. And then Chicken says, "I know everything, but I forget it." Yeah, and then Nani just says, "I know everything." I think knowing everything and then forgetting it too. The other thing about this is, and I'm actually going to do kind of a tier list on some of these tanks, guys, because it's the same thing. Hyper will say that Nightblades don't have a burst heal, and then and so they're not good, and he'll say various reasons why they're not good, and then other people will hear that and they'll just repeat it, and nobody puts any thought into it. Those things, a lot of these things have not been true for a long time, and so I think Nightblades are the easiest class to play for a new tank, objectively, and I can kind of show that. Like, now we can argue that, and that's something that I could be like, yeah, you might have a favorite class or whatever. How many times do you see me on a Nightblade tank in content? Almost never, right? Because I don't really care. I think the Necro is the best for helping groups get through content. And so that's why I'm always on a Necro. So I kind of want to talk about some of this stuff more in a more dedicated fashion. Siphoning strikes here, though, for those who don't know, let me move to the other side here. Sorry. Siphoning strikes here, for those who don't know, gives you a stupid amount of recovery. Okay, the equivalent of 400 Magicka and Stamina recovery, as well as the recoveries are every 2 seconds, guys. That's why you double it, but it gives you 200 Magicka and Stamina every second while you're doing damage, and a 1200 HP heal. It's absolutely crazy. And then if you cast it, it gives you back 2600 Magicka and Stamina, and it doesn't drop block. It's great. It's perfect. It's awesome. And so that's why it's so good for newer players. The Nightblade does have probably one of the most distinct playstyles of all the other tanks. So I do understand that. You have to keep up your Dark Cloak quite often, and that's a different kind of ability and different kind of skill, but it's still there. Robert said, well, let me see here if I missed something. Would siphoning restore stamina while you're blocking? If so, I want to make one now. It will, yeah, Robert, it will. And then Robert says your 1-bar Nightblade tank build is awesome. That's great to hear, man. That's great to hear. Yeah, you can cast it actively and it won't drop block, which the only other class that could do something like that is a sorcerer, but a sorcerer will drop block. I'm stubborn. I like Nightblade too much to not be one. Hey, there you go. All right, Nani, have a good time. Nani says, I am off to give terrible advice in VDSR. See you later. Oh, and Nightblade tank is the best tank ever. Thanks, Naughty. Walter says, when I started playing in 2006, I was a Nightblade tank. Don't forget concealed weapon on back bar. Yeah, yeah. Where Moogle is, I think, actually, I'm not sure if Where Moogle's talking about the speed or something else. No, I think they're talking about this. Where Moogle messaged me the other day, guys, I've done 3 Nightblade tank videos at this point, maybe 4. And one of the things you need to do if you're the only Nightblade in a group is you need to make sure you're proccing Hemorrhage down here because that gives a unique buff to your group. But to do that, all you have to do is do damage and have one of these skills from the skill line on your bar. And I didn't mention that in the video. And where Moogle was like, hey, what about how do you proc this or what's going on with that? And I was like, oh God, did I just forget? And I mentioned it, but I didn't make it really clear that I think that running either concealed weapon, I think on a tank concealed weapon, and I went through this with Where Moogle and kind of DMs and what have you. But it's very important you have it, and that's an example of a mistake I made on my builds. Not perfect. I've made that more clear in my older videos, and I just forgot to make it crystal clear in the newest one. So, and that's a pretty big deal, and it's on me for that. So I've tried to make sure that people I know about this, but you need to have one of these so you can proc this Hemorrhage passive. I think I have 2 character slots available. That's funny. Okay. So that's another thing. Another thing that we could talk about a bit is with our jewelry. Now, Hyper's, I think, done a video probably going over the math of running infused versus running harmony. Guys, the thing I will tell you is that I have been in the sweatiest hard modes in the game with people that are sweaty, and I have still been asking for synergies, okay? And not getting them. I also know people that are much more sweaty and more skilled at the game than I have, and they still insist on running infused. Why? Because they have enough recoveries with infused that why would they run harmony? Because harmony only works some of the time and when you're getting synergies. And if they just run infused, they don't have to worry about it. Okay? Now, is there a situation where you would want to run harmony? 3rd floor in Kind's Aegis when you're perma blocking and you're sure you're getting synergies, and you should be, everybody's right there, might be a good place to slot in some harmony. But what I would argue is that 90% of the time, more, 95, 99, you want to be running infused and then just run harmony in certain situations if it's better for you there. However, if you are running a red guard, you're getting back stamina anyways. Or if you're running a Nightblade, so you could probably be fine. So I'm kind of joking there a little bit at the end, but you get the idea. I don't think I could ever run harmony. You just can't rely on it. Exactly. And, if you're always running in optimized groups, which some small number of people are, maybe it works great for them. For me, I'm always going to run infused because I'm telling you, if things go wrong, if you're progging something, people are going to be dead. And you're the one, if you're a tank and you stay alive, the group will stay alive. And if they're dead, they can't give you synergies. And how are they going to give you synergies when they're trying to res people? To me, it just doesn't make sense for most people to run. And again, reasonable minds can vary, right? We can say, I have harmony. I can argue for a situation where you might want to slot it, but I don't think it's something you want to do all the time. Okay. That out of the way. Hey guys, another thing is my audio, whenever I pull up the YouTube here, is it still okay? Before, ESO has this issue now that whenever I have up, something else over ESO, I'm tabbed out, it'll mess with my audio because it's like drawing too many resources or something. How do I tell this to go away? I would like to, behaviors, automatically hide. I have selected this more than once before. Audio is good. Okay, cool. All right, thank you both. I appreciate it. Okay, let's take a look. We got a little bit of time. Do we? Yeah, we have a little bit of time if I hurry. Let's take a look at ranking of best classes. Yeah, maybe let's take a look here. Oh, I should probably say ESO. Best tanking classes? Oh my god. Yeah, we should probably add that too. Yeah, another example of well, never mind. We'll just go on. So Jake Clips here has done videos where he's basically saying that horoscope type things, like oh, if you rezone and open crown crates in a different area, you'll get better drops. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, that when someone does stuff like that they know is disingenuous, because I've told them and he's done a bunch of videos like that. Um, this is someone that I don't have a whole lot of respect for, and so I'm never going to recommend anybody ever watch their content. That's different than saying I disagree with Zynode on something, and I just want to make that very clear. I can disagree with someone on something, and that's different than someone basically recommending, nonsense to people. We got Hyper down here. Somewhere is it? It's not picking up. Do we got to have tanking in it? Maybe we'll make sure tanking is in there. Hey, there we go. 6 months ago. It's not bad. I don't know if I want to go through this whole thing. I mean, it's an hour and a half long. I just want to say I don't think I got through all of it. Um, I generally, like I said, I've had pretty good experiences with TC and in their Discord where people are trying to help. In this video, a couple of things. He repeats the incorrect statement that like Nightblades don't have a burst heal. It's not true, and there's honestly quite a bit of stuff here in this video that I saw that was just like it's just incorrect, and people are again, people keep talking about DKs, like DKs are so great. Well, here let's just look at Hyper's video. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey guys, in this video we'll make a tier list of all tank classes for different types of content.
ESO tier lists are so subjective. I'm like taking notes on them, but I can't live by them. Yeah. Tank Club swears by a DK and Arc. Do they still swear by DK and Arc, Robert? I think Hyper does too, and I kind of wonder if that Tank Club isn't somewhat just copying what other people are saying here, because his content doesn't seem entirely original. The issue with, you don't think he's made any video recently? Okay. I mean, I guess we can look. He kind of has some of this stuff outlined here. So Runic Sunder. Runic Sunder also, oh, this is group benefits, strengths, weaknesses. Yeah, I think it's how you want to divide it out too is another thing. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with most of that. I watched this though, guys, and I'd like to be able to say Tank Club is still top notch. Again, I just want to say that there's a lot of stuff that was not correct. That's all.
We're going to have 4 categories: dungeons, trials, infinite archive, and beginner friendly.
So speaking of stuff being subjective, to me, I would say, so when he says beginner friendly, I think it's more like survivability and ease of use. Also, that's important for beginners, but it's really important for everybody because it will come back when you get into hard modes, because it's like restarting over, and it'll come back when you're getting in trifectas, because you'll realize like, oh, I'm now doing something harder. The trifectas, the difference between like the trifectas, because typically you'll be asked to do things that are harder on you without concern for how you're doing and how things are for you, and so that's why it becomes more harder running hard modes versus trifectas, even though technically nothing is different than those. Obviously, going from veteran to hard mode, there's new mechanics and things are different. Yeah, so I would say that for me, it's like dungeons also don't really matter. I think I understand putting it in here because a lot of people only run dungeons, but really you're talking about that ease of use, the survivability and stuff like that, because that's what people who run dungeons really want. And whatever is optimal for a dungeon it's just based on your group composition. There are a few things that are like, yeah, this is very useful, but not very much anymore. And then the other thing is like trials. You just so for me, the 3 ways I would divide it out, I think 3 is, first I would say ease of use, beginner friendly if you want to call it that. This is all one category. Ease of use, yeah, beginner friendly, easy to stay alive, how survivable is it, is one category. The other category is optimal, and optimal we all agree on, just to be clear, just about all of us agree on. Optimal is like what's best for the group. The thing is, what happens with optimal is that every single person wants to do the quote unquote optimal thing, regardless of if it makes any sense for them. You see this with trials where you'll have a pug group that can probably can't even clear the content, maybe can barely clear the content, and they'll try to do hard mode mechanics in non-hard mode, hard mode strats in non-hard mode is what I mean to say. And they do that because they saw someone else doing it and they heard this is the best way. And it's like, no, there's a lot easier way to do this. Since we're not doing hard mode, we don't need to do hard mode strats. And so that's one of those things where you see this all the time, and it happens far too much. The number of people that need optimal stuff is very small, and the number of people that want to do it or think they want to do it is huge, is most of the community, and it just doesn't make any sense. But anyways, optimal, survivability, and then best for the group in general. And so those are the three categories that I would choose. I don't think he's made any of those. Okay, Nightblade too sneaky to be mainstream. A good Nightblade is never noticed till it's too late. Moogle, 100%. This is the way. Trial class choices seem to be sort of locked in from a person on the outside looking in. Robert, I will tell you that what happens a lot of times is the same thing. People have, it's kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect. People will learn what is optimal and what everybody is doing, and then they'll just repeat it. And they don't understand why they're doing it. And when I say this, I mean group composition, but I also mean builds and class skills and everything else like that. I have seen logs from groups that are running things that are like a year out of date. And it's like, why are they running this? And they're doing hard mode. They're doing sweaty stuff. Hard mode, Lucent Citadel, hard mode Rockgrove, hard mode DSR. And they're doing it because that's what other people were doing. And it's like, I can look at it and I can be like, there's no reason they should be running that skill, but they are. And it's like, here's what they should be doing, but they're just a year out of date. So a lot of people just copy and paste. Yeah, Walter's saying a lot of people just copy paste rosters and gear and everything else, and which would be fine. But a lot of those same people are the ones saying that other people are stupid for not doing what they're doing, and being mean and being toxic, and that's the problem. Yeah, the optimal class is the one you enjoy playing the most for sure.
The balance between tank classes is currently in the best spot I've ever seen. And on top of that, the scrap.
I would just want to say, I won't stop this. I'll let this play, but I absolutely agree. Tanking is in a great spot with the scribing skills right now. Honestly, most of it is in a great spot. DPS is the only problem because Arcanists are just a tier above everybody else in their ease of use and their DPS output.
Scribing system has evened the ground even further. So keep in mind that a class I'm putting in the lowest tier isn't in as horrible a state as it was in my previous tank class tier list. Back then, a bottom tier class was really tough to play. Now...
this wasn't true whenever he did this. A Templar was not this bad, nor was a Nightblade, just for clarity.
A bottom tier class is simply worse than others, but not necessarily trash. Also, I am going to account for the incoming Update 43 changes, which aren't that big, but are going to impact some placements. If you don't know what's coming, check out this video.
He's saying he's going to account for Update 43 changes. Okay.
Where I briefly go over the changes. First, I want to quickly describe each class and list their strengths and weaknesses, because I'll be referring to them later on, when I place classes into categories. First, we have Dragon Knight. Defensive-wise, they have access to additional armor and block mitigation, decent damage shields,
okay.
Stamina restoring passive that makes stamina sustain trivial, and an ultimate that makes him immortal, in case a fight goes really bad. They can also use protective plates to greatly reduce damage taken from projectiles. They also provide the minor brutality buff, which will increase the group's weapon and spell damage, increasing everyone's damage and healing. They can also provide the group of major brutality and sorcery through igneous weapons, which your teammates can get through other ways, but getting it from igneous weapons allows them to make changes to their builds. For example, if they don't need to get major brutality from their potions, they can use heroism or tristat pots instead, and some classes need those to sustain. Offensively, they provide the stagger debuff, which increases enemies' damage taken, and engulfing flames, which increases flame damage taken. Next, Arcan.
Okay, so let's just walk through that. I just want to let it play.
First, I want to quickly describe each class and list their strengths and weaknesses, because I'll be referring to them later on.
Okay,
when
sorry.
I place classes.
Wait.
Defensive-wise,
there we go. Okay, so they get extra resistances. That's really nice. Definitely there. Iron Skin reduces the amount of or increases the amount of damage they can block. So this is not really. I mean, it can be helpful in a certain fights if you want to get your block mitigation. But remember, we can get to cap if we try. And so I don't think this is a big of a deal. But
Access to
it's not
additional
bad.
armor and block mitigation, decent damage.
Okay, so these decent damage shields. The problem with these damage shields now, and I guys, I could be wrong about when the patch came out and what was added. Did we not get warding contingency before update 44? I think we did. If it would be nice if more people thought this way, scribing us open up tanking to a lot of classes. Yeah. So now, and I think he's done a video pointing this out. I don't know if it wasn't the case whenever he did this. I assume that's probably the case. But now things have changed to where the best shield to use, it has nothing to do with your class. It's a classless skill. It's a scribing skill. And if you use that, then you got to drop something. You probably still want to keep hardened armor. You might add it as a third one, but you're not going to have, I don't think you're going to have those 3 skills. And so that's going to detract from this. Everybody now has a shield, so the playing field is a lot more level.
Shields.
Yeah, DK skills are subpar. Yeah. And then he points out here that the helping hands gives you stamina back, right? It's free stamina even while blocking. The problem is literally the only skill that you're going to use with that right now that it really makes sense to use is Igneous Shields. And Igneous Shield is no longer useful and probably not something you want to use on mode because the scribing skills is better. And so now there's not really the only other skill you really want to use, literally the only other skill you'd want to use is Igneous Weapons. And it would be really weird to overcast Igneous Weapons so that you could get back 1,000 stamina. And so it's made DK in this really awkward place where it's like, oh, they can get back as much stamina as you want. It's like you kind of don't want to be running Igneous though. If you're running Igneous, then you can't run the scribing skill that will provide a shield to you and everybody around you bigger than what Igneous Shield does, as well as giving you a unique 8% damage reduction. So it's kind of an odd place for it to be in right now.
Decent damage shields.
So that's why this helping hands is like, I mean, this is less useful.
And an ultimate that makes it...
Magma Shell is absolutely broken. Yeah, Magma Shell is great. For 10 seconds, you can't die. That does work great.
Immortal, in case a fight goes really bad. They can also use Protective Plate.
Protective Plate, this is kind of obscure. Yeah, block some missiles, and there's a couple of unique situations, Zamaja and Rakat,
to greatly reduce
that'll be good on, and there's a handful of others.
They also provide the minor brutality buff, which...
Unique buff, absolutely, really important for the group, sure. A DK DPS will do this though, too, right? So
which will increase the group's weapon and spell damage, increasing everyone's damage and healing. They can also provide a group of major brutality and sword.
Same deal here. The Igneous Weapons,
which your teammates can get through.
You can get this through a DPS. It's a little bit more awkward for a DPS. So yeah, and I understand in optimal groups why you'd want a tank to run this. That's fair.
They can use Heroism or Tristat pots instead, and some classes need those to sustain. Offensively, they provide...
Stagger, same deal. You could have a DPS run this. I have a Stamina DK that runs this, as well as Engulfing Flames. It can get a little awkward to just have a tank running all of, or a DPS running all of these skills. It can be a bit limiting for him, but that's fair. Other things, and probably some of the major things for the average player for a DK that I think are missing here, I should actually probably pull up. I bet I have a list somewhere. But one is, I would say, on a DK, whenever you cast an ultimate, you get back all of your resources, and it doesn't matter what ultimate it is. You get back like 50 magic and stamina per ultimate spent. Is that what it is? I think that's what it is. It's something crazy. If you use any normal ultimate though, you'll basically get full bars. And that you can use like if you're in Cloud Rest and you're downstairs and all of a sudden you're like low on resources and you're about to die, any ultimate you use will give you full resources and that will keep you alive. And so that's one of the things I don't think he mentions here that is like really useful on a DK that is pretty unique to them in addition to everything else. I pulled up a list here. I have it on my phone. What else? The armor, he mentioned that. That's really nice. What else do we have? Yeah, the emergency resource is crazy. And maybe that's it. Maybe everything else is he covers pretty well there, which makes sense. I know it's one of his favorite classes. Let's look at the Arcanist. DK shields are subpar. Scribing shields even. Oh yeah, the free pull skill is pretty great. On a DK, are you talking about the chain or what are you talking about there, Robert?
Otherwise, they have access to absurdly high damage shields. Tons of armor and recovery from passives.
Tons of armor and recovery. So Erudite is pretty huge. 18% increased magic and stamina recovery. That's hooked up. This Wellspring of the Abyss is less useful, honestly. I mean, it's not nothing. And then Aegis of the Unseen giving you extra armor, absolutely dope. That's really cool. If you're not a Nord or it can save you that CP slot, it's really nice. Chains can refund the cost. Yeah. If they can't pull something, they change. Yeah, now we have scribing chains that I think every class kind of has access to, and they give you a little bit of stamina back, or they can. And so I think the DK chain is like less useful now. And I think I don't think it's bad if you're going to be chaining things you're missing, but now the scribe, you can just use the scribing chain. So it's kind of like not really. The other thing is that DKs don't really have a source of speed from their class except for the chain, and it's awkward to use that chain for your speed. And so they're kind of slower than most other tanks in most situations, or more cumbersome.
And an ability that heals you when you fall below 50% HP. This makes surviving so much easier because as long as you pay attention to your rune guard, you're safe. If your rune guard is up, then you're completely safe from smaller damage ticks. You can only die by not blocking some heavy attack. If your rune guard is not up, then your next action should be reapplying it. They can also help their group survive with the Curative Surge, a healing.
Curative Surge is broken, guys. If you run Tri-Stat reduce costs on Curative Surge, I have a friend, Lenny, who I think he got this to be free. And so you can cast Curative Surge for free, and it still heals you for a lot, and your group. It's kind of broken.
Beam. This ability is kind of unreliable because of the desync, but if your allies are standing still, you can heal them for a lot, because its scaling is completely busted, so it heals for a lot even with tank stats. Offensively, they provide a unique 2200 armor debuff, and they can easily keep minor vulnerability and minor brittle with a single skill.
So there's some. I'm sorry, I should let this run.
Easily keep minor vulnerability and minor brittle with a single
skill. So I think this is in the time period where he didn't realize that you can get these buffs now, minor brittle and minor vuln. They basically just come for free now, particularly the minor brittle by using Elisus. I'm pretty sure that was I'm almost positive that was in effect here. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was in effect during the patch he's talking about. Because he's only talking one patch ago. Because he's saying he's looking forward. So minor brittle has not been something you needed a skill for. You just run Elisus for the longest time in trials. If you're in a dungeon, maybe it could be a little bit different. But that's just a different situation. Only bad thing about arc tanks is there's so many arcs, DPS and healers. Yeah. And same with vulnerability. There's just a lot of sources of all of these things now. And I'm not sure he's up on that based on information that we talked about earlier.
Debuffs that can be accessed through different means, but it's a bit more difficult. Utility-wise?
Yeah, and again, I think the difference is I don't think it's that much more difficult now. If you're in a 4-man group, we might be talking, but otherwise, no.
You have the Arcanist Gate, a portal that allows you to keep jumping between 2 positions. It's extremely unreliable on even slightly uneven ground, but there are fights where it can be useful. Next, a Necromancer. The most unique tank class gameplay-wise. Defensive-wise, they have access to the best roll damage.
Let me see here. On Arcanist, just to go back a little bit. On Arcanist, any other notes? Yeah, there was one I started to say something about. Let me go here. Where is it at? Runic Sunder for your taunt. Something that I don't think a lot of people appreciate. Assuming it works. I should say that. Assuming it works the way it's supposed to. Maybe somebody can confirm for me. We need to get Spark in here or something so he can confirm for us. Spark, are you there? I don't see where he talked about it now.
For a lot.
I'll mute it and let it play through, I guess. There we go. It'll come up in a second. So one of the things is that for your taunt, if you're not running Inner Rage or whatever, which I don't recommend probably on an Arcanist running, is that your Runic Sunder provides you with 2% reduced damage per crux that you have. So it generates crux, and then it reduces your damage up to 6%. 2% per crux, 3 crux, 6%. I mean, that's unique, and it's something you can't get anywhere else, and I think it's pretty cool. And so I think Runic Sunder on really hard-hitting fights, is a great idea. Zombie Crow says, I used to tank on Nightblade. Oh, there it is. I remember tanking VMAL hard mode on a Khajiit Nightblade back when everyone pretty much ran DK tanks before Wardens and Necros even existed. Fun times. Yeah. I also used to run a Nightblade tank back in the day. They were not as good as they are now. I used to run it despite the fact that they weren't good, depending on when it was. Sometimes they were okay. Sometimes, a lot of times, they were not that great, but did it anyways, right? So yeah, minor maim, we get this for free. Yeah, down here at the bottom, while slotted, damage taken is reduced by 2% per active crux. I think a lot of people forget about this. Hey, Wampus, what's going on? Lyriel said, I just read the title of the stream. For some reason, I thought this was going to be about how to fake tank. I think someone made a joke about it at the start, and I didn't realize it wasn't serious. Yeah, Lyriel, that's funny. I said at the start that I threw this thumbnail and title together in like literally 5 minutes, just as fast as I could make it. And I was like, how do I express what I want to say, but also be somewhat interesting? And so I threw something up there. So I apologize if anybody felt baited. It wasn't intentional. It's just literally because, and then Rune of the Color of this pool here, we don't really need this at all anymore in any kind of organized group content. Are there anything else that I would say? The mobility is great. Runic Sunder, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I tend to agree with all this stuff. I think I said everything else I wanted to say. I think we could skip on to the Nightblade.
Reliable.
We'll here, let it. There we go. Robert Miller says arc skills are jam packed with stuff. Yeah. I mean, there was a new class. They want to make sure they were good, and they did that. They've done that with all 3 of the classes they've added. Is it 3, 4? And honestly, I don't have too much of a problem with it, except like it's a little too, the Arcanists, they went overboard, and they did that with Necros too, so it's a little bit too much. Like, you could make them really good, but not go quite as overboard. Arcanists are just so much better at DPS, for example, and many other things, that it's like, I don't have a problem with it. I want them to buff the other classes to come in line with it. That's what I'd like. Because, like, healing tombs on an Arcanist healer is, like, trivial. The beam is just ridiculous, and there's just too much stuff that like that. One or two things is cool. We see that on the DK with Magma Shell and other stuff. They have some unique stuff. Getting back ultimate by casting, Necro. Well, we'll talk about it here in a second, I guess. But sap tanks were extremely fun. Hell yeah, sap tanks were fun. Oh my god, I haven't heard the word sap tank in a long time, Zombie. That's crazy. I think the title is great. I just expected it to be about how to fake tank. That's funny. I mean, I talked about that, Lyriel. I do. They made my Brittledin obsolete. Yeah, Brittledins now, you don't need them. The good thing about Brittledins, though, Lyriel, is I would say is they're still the meta or a meta thing to do with a Brittledin. But yeah, they're not needed, and that does kind of suck for sure. But they can be helpful. They're useful in unoptimized group, and they're still the best thing. I've brought my Brittledin to groups because it was the thing that I parsed the highest on historically. And people were like, we don't need a Brittledin. And it's like, this is what I parse highest on. And they're like, okay, get in here. Templar needs love too. Templar does need some love. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, we could talk more about that too. There are some classes that need some love.
And Necromancer, the most unique tank class gameplay wise.
Yeah, that's not true. Nightblades are the most unique class by far. The only thing unique about the Necro really is your main heal is a scythe. Yeah. Other than that, they're fairly standard, to be totally honest.
Access to the best roll damage mitigation at the cost.
I say that as a Necro tank main, just to be clear.
Of not having any class damage shields. The Spirit Guardian will constantly grant you a 10% damage reduction.
He's talking about damage shields, guys. Did we not get scribing in update 40, like the shield in update 43? Was it 44? Can somebody fact check me on this? I've got the patch notes for update 44. It was 44? Oh, okay. All right, so then a lot of this stuff, okay, so this all changed. That sucks. This is one of the problems that a lot of us creators have had an issue with, Zos, is that we spend all this time making videos, and then like the next week they like change something. Okay.
The Disdain Harm passive will reduce your damage taken from dots by 50%.
Sorry, let's go back.
Access to the best roll damage mitigation at the cost of not having any class damage shields. The Spirit Guardian will constantly grant you a 10% damage reduction. The
Thank you,
Disdain
Robert.
Harm passive will reduce your damage taken from dots by 15%. And it's actually extremely important because the hardest content in the game is all about dots. Your main self-heal, Hungry Scythe, can reach massive numbers when used against multiple enemies. But it can also be unreliable, because you need to hit someone to heal yourself.
So I just want to say that like I never feel like Hungering Scythe is a massive heal because the place you need it on is usually boss fights and there's rarely more than a couple of things to hit. So I don't feel like it's a good heal. It can be, but it mostly feels adequate. And then the biggest problem is it's only melee. Now melee has gone up to 7 meters, which is great. But this is what makes Necro the hardest tank class in the game. Yeah, I think that's true because your heal is only melee, your primary melee heal. And you want this just for the record. It's pretty good, but it's hard.
So when you're repositioning, or when there's just no enemies next to you, you just lose access to your main healing tool.
Yeah.
This is a big deal in some fights.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, they have the access to the Glacial Colossus ultimate, which applies major vulnerability, increasing enemies' damage taken by 10%. This can be obtained from item sets, such as Turning Tide or Archdruid, but getting it from the Colossus allows you to replace these sets with other support sets. They also have the best ultimate generation out of all tank classes.
This has also changed now. We have access to a lot of ulti skills from the scribing skill line now.
Thanks to Necrotic Potency, which allows them to drain ultimate out of corpses.
Not that this isn't still great.
Utility-wise, they have access to the Reanimate ultimate, which instantly resurrects 3 allies.
This right here, guys, Reanimate is what to me makes so for group utility. If you want to build your tank to help out your group that is going to be struggling, Reanimate is that's the Necro Res. That's where it's at. It just makes everything so much better. Robert says Necros having major and minor resolve on a single button feels great. Yeah, Robert. They actually, just FYI, they added minor resolve to most tank classes now. So most tank classes, or at least half, have a great source of it now, which is I think is great. And it's honestly you should be getting it from a healer combat prayer, but now we don't have to worry about that. And it's so important and will increase your damage taken so much. It's great that we can just have it for free on most tanks now. Absolutely.
It can save a lot of time by
And if you don't, you can add it to a scribing skill pretty easily.
preventing a wipe. For example, when you're the last person alive, while also being under too much pressure to be able to resurrect anyone the normal way.
Yep.
Next,
Guys, I cannot say like I've saved runs over and over again using Necro Res. Just the run was over if I didn't have a Necro Res, and I had it, and it saved the run. Let's just skip ahead because I'm running out of time. I'm chatting with a old friend, haven't talked to in a long time on the hour, so we'll jump forward to Nightblade and then we'll wrap it up there.
And last, Nightblades. Defensive wise, they have incredibly busted sustain, thanks to siphoning strikes.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much where the good stuff ends. Their healing
Okay. Siphoning strikes, and then that's where the good stuff ends. What siphoning strikes does he have here? So, yeah, channel a portion of your health while slotted on either bar. I mean, this is ridiculous. You get... Oh, it doesn't have the recoveries on here right now, the version he's using. I didn't think that was that update 44? I thought they did that in 43. Am I wrong? Robert, you seem to know. I have, again, 44 up. Let's just look at it. Maybe we'll pull it over or something. I thought that was covered. Let's go to combat, gameplay. Oh, it's the wrong morph. Oh, he just has the wrong morph? Okay. Siphoning attacks is the name of the good one. Oh, okay. Well, let's see if they changed it here, because this is update 44. Teleport strike, shadow. That's all I see. Unless they change it in like a future iteration, because I don't know. These are never combined, I don't think. Maybe they changed it, but it doesn't even look like it was on the radar. And you get the health buff from it on your bar. Yeah, your maximum health goes up. Yeah, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. But this is regardless, we'll just say that maybe it was like update 44 or they changed it after he did this video. This now gives constant recoveries, 200 magicka and stamina, and a heal, and this healing every 1 second while you're doing damage on either bar. And then if you cast it, you actually get back 2,600 magicka and stamina, which is crazy, and it doesn't drop block. So this skill, it just makes things so much easier for tanks. And even when you get into hard stuff, I've ran out of stam on the 3rd floor in Kind's Aegis, guys, many times, and it sucks. And even when I don't, I'm still panicked for it. I've also never done it on a Nightblade that I can recall. So it's absolutely, I mean, even in the sweatiest content, I mean, if you're not going to be a red guard, I suppose.
sustain, thanks to siphoning strikes. But that's pretty much where the good stuff ends.
Man, okay. Well, let's just see what else he
Killing
has to
over
say.
time can be decent when a fight allows them to stand still, but as I said before, that doesn't happen often. Just like with Templar, their instant self-heal can randomly go on an ally if they're more wounded than you, making it extremely unreliable.
I'm going to let this play and we'll go
Defensive-wise,
back.
they provide a unique minor savagery buff that increases crit chance by 6%, and they can provide minor vulnerability in an AoE, thanks to Lotus Fan. Now that we have the general idea of what each class brings to the table.
Oh wow, that's all he had to say. Okay. So we'll go back a bit. All right. And then I'll keep it on mute so I can talk over easily. Where Moogle said, but also sadly, this exact video. Okay, so you watch this video is why I struggle with Nightblade tanking after coming back to the game after like 5 years. Didn't even think to use offering over cloak as main heal. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, Where Moogle. So one of the things about Dark Cloak is you have minor protection. DKs don't have that. They have to find a source, so it's already built in. About half the classes do, half the classes don't. Now you can just put that on your Ulfsild's, on your warding contingency as your 3rd option, your affix option. So everybody can get it now, but they already have it built in here, which frees that up to be something else that you might want. Turns out on a Nightblade, we don't have a lot of great options, so it's kind of wasted, but it was nice to have. It was nice to have at the time. Also, this heal is massive. You can get stupid amounts of heals over time on a Nightblade, and even while moving, it's still a good heal. This is just our source also of major resolve, for those who don't know. It's from a passive, so it's not on the skill, but by using this skill, we get our major resolve. So this is our source, just FYI. So it also does that. So it's a great skill. It does 3 things in one, and the heal over time, it says 3 seconds. Again, with passives in the skill line, it goes up to 5 seconds. Okay. What else do we have here? Was that it? I think that. Oh, okay. So I mentioned, and I said to him on one of his videos that you can use offering. Wait, what does he say about it? So that he would know that you have a burst heal.
Templar, their instant self-heal can
you don't want to use healthy offering. You want to use shrewd offering.
Randomly go on an ally if they're more.
Oh, he says that it can randomly go on an ally. That's not a bug. That's a benefit. That's a huge benefit, actually, that it can go on another ally. So there are a couple of classes that you have tank heals that can actually do a significant amount of healing to your ally. If you're an off tank, or even if you're a main tank, but if you're an off tank or whatever, and the other tank is about to die or about to take a bunch of damage, you can, or even a DPS, right? You can use your offering to keep them alive. It just, I don't know what else to say. Like, you can use it to keep people alive. You can use it to heal people out of tombs. People do that with wardens and with sorcerers on something like Sunspire when they're helping heal tombs. So it's a benefit, not a drawback. Hello, here. Everyone. So I just want to pull up the card here. Actually, you know what I should do? What I really want to do is pull up the website, but I can't. It's hosted locally, so I can't just pull up the website easily for you guys. I should fix that. But here's what you want your bar to look like. And the benefits to a Nightblade there's actually quite a few. So you have a class version of Major Cowardice, which is a nice to have. Siphoning of Strikes is just completely broken. It's absolutely amazing. So nothing to say about that. Everything else is kind of the same. You have your path is pretty nice. It provides you with a bit of speed. But if you instead choose to go with something like Mirage, that will give you cheaper or free roll dodges, which can be very helpful in a lot of situations, as well as providing you with that minor resolve. That's where we get it on a Nightblade. So you can also slot Concealed Weapon, and you want to if you're the only Nightblade. So with Concealed Weapon and with our path down, we're getting both minor and major expedition, which gives you an extra 45% total movement speed increase. And being fast on a tank is crucially important. So, you know, maybe there's nothing else like insane about them, but they're still very good. The other thing is that if you want to, you can slot other heals, and you can provide a ridiculous amount of heal over time for yourself. I think it's more of a meme or like a solo tank in a dungeon thing with no healer. But so that's why I don't put it on this particular build. But yeah, Nightblades are I don't know, they're good, and they're the easiest to use is the thing. They're the easiest to use, and that's why on the 1 bar build with these guys, it does literally everything that you want it to on 1 bar. And you don't even use the Oaken Soul Ring. Why? Because the Oaken Soul Ring doesn't give you anything that you don't already get. You have minor protection from your Dark Cloak. You don't need minor Aegis because you're already wearing trial sets. You get major resolve because you already get it here. You get minor resolve typically through your healers. What else do you need, right? And then you could put Siphoning Strike on your back bar to still get all those recoveries. You could put your Spectral Bow skill. I think this is the right morph to, I forget what it's called, to provide you with extra weapon and spell damage, which will increase your burst heal in Efficient Offering. And then you could run Concealed Weapon to give you an extra 15% movement speed just to be a little bit faster. So yeah, Nighthauer talking about Nightblade taking in front of a Nighthauer talking about tanking. Yeah, Nightception. Oh man, I just need to pull it up. I use my own cards. I really just want to look at the card. I use them for my own like memory tools because I forget stuff too, and it's nice to have it. And I sat down and was like, I'm making this thing exactly how I want it at this time. And so yeah, it is kind of funny. Would you play this as an Argonian? Absolutely, Mother Clucker. I have an Argonian Nightblade, and I ran my Argonian Nightblade actually running the produce potion cooldown and everything else in hard mode Dread Cell Reef, and it worked really well. It worked great. Yeah. I'm literally following card now. Just got a level. Oh, that's awesome, Robert. That's good to hear. Yeah. Well, guys, I don't. Are there any other questions that we got before we call it here? Anything else I can cover to kind of talk about a little bit more? I hope. My whole point today is not to like start any drama. I'm sure you guys know this, but other people might not. It's just to say that like if we got to argue the facts and we got to argue the the content, and if we have someone who is continually putting out really poor quality content, that's fine. Like, let's talk about that. But let's not say someone who is trying to put out really good content is horrible and terrible, and say that they don't know anything about the game if they're making small mistakes. And if we're gonna be doing stuff wrong ourselves, maybe we shouldn't say anybody who thinks differently than us doesn't know anything about the game, especially when we can see that we've made a bunch of mistakes along the way. That's really the TLDR on this whole thing. Nice pants. Thank you, Mother Clucker. I was in PvP like this. This is like random. This is the peak fashion right here. This is a found object fashion. I just didn't find any pants. Is Expert Evasion a must on that build? No. I like running Bash CP. You like running Bash CP? That's wild. Okay. Sure, man. No. Expert Evasion is just really nice to have for the reroll dodge, so I like it. The red CP is a choose your own adventure. Make sure you're at resistance cap. Everything else is do whatever you want. Bashing is awesome. All right. Hey, I'm wrong. You guys are right. What do I know? No, I mean, I just don't bash that much. No, that totally works, though, Robert. Oh, I remember. I need a second to type it out. No problem, Where Moogle. We'll hang out for a second, man. You are good. Take your time. Yeah, so this guy, I don't know what this guy is now. But this was my tank, so it might be. And then I kind of made my Dark Elf also a tank, just because I had everything leveled on them. And then also have. It's also kind of my Nightblade healer. Did I delete one of my Nightblades? I think I deleted them because I was planning on leveling another one, and that's probably what I'll do. Wait, how many Nightblades do I have? 1, 2, 3. I only have 3. Oh, I deleted one of them. This is my Khajiit. I usually use them for PvP. Looking stylish there. When's your 24-hour live stream? Mother Clucker, probably never. Yeah, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. I have considered, I was actually talking with Mrs. Hara about this. I actually have considered doing like a month or something where I just stream like all the time and cut down on the videos for that month. I don't know if that's something that's a good idea or not, but it's something I think. It's tomorrow. That's awesome. Yeah, right. All right. Where Moogle says on my Nightblade tank, dual ice. I dual ice Destro, but is there instances where a sword and board is required over double Destro? I haven't leveled it up at all and would like to know if I need to. Where Moogle? The answer to that is there is a situation you might want to run a sword and board. And the situation is when you want to use parry as the shield throw. Put parry on the shield throw to avoid mechanics. An example of that, and there's a couple that you can use, but an example of that was yesterday when we were in Rockgrove and we're talking about the main tank being able to parry the spit so that you don't get the goo underneath you. That would be a situation. You either have to use dual wield or sword and board. Obviously, as a tank, you would use a sword and board in a hard mode trial. So that would be the situation. Parry can be broken, but it looks so hard to use. Yeah, exactly. And it can be tricky because if you cast it at the wrong time, you might parry the wrong skill. So it's like, yeah, it's pretty high risk, high reward. It's really top tier. So that is the only situation where Moogle. On a Nightblade, generally speaking, you can use Siphoning Strike to get back stamina, so you don't need to worry about heavy attacking. Oh yeah, the double shield, double parry joke. Oh, I don't know about that joke. Probably from like TC Lee or something. I know they do the double shield joke. Oh, you made that joke. You mentioned something about that. Yeah. So yeah, that would be the one situation that I can think of. It's also a good source, could be a good source of major maim, although you can get that from other things. Sword and board is the best. Pairing with the shield is all I know. You can, you can do it. You can do it also with dual wield, or I think two-handed probably. The weapons you would think you could parry with in a more real sense, you can do it. Well, guys, I think if we've answered all of Where Moogle's questions, I think we will call it here for today. It's been a good discussion. I've enjoyed it. I hope that we made some good points, and I hope we changed a few minds on some of this stuff. Mother Clucker, I got to go. I got to chat with a friend that I haven't talked to in a long time. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry to leave you. I'm sorry. If I could, I would keep going. Yeah, I don't know. You guys let me know if you'd like to see me maybe do like a month where I stream a whole bunch or maybe add a little bit more. It's I've been enjoying streaming. Historically, I haven't liked it as much. Haven't felt like I was very good at it. I also find it incredibly difficult to keep the energy up for more than a couple of hours. So I don't know if I'm going to be good streaming for 8 hours. I don't know how people do that, but it's something I've considered. You guys let me know what you think. Also, guys, if if you like what you see, I know many of you guys already have. Subscribe, become a channel member. You can donate on Ko-fi, however you'd like. But that's the best way to make it easy for me to keep doing more content. I watch whenever you're on, so sure. Okay. Appreciate that, Robert. Appreciate that. I know Mrs. Hare likes what she sees. She got a chuckle out of that, Mother Clucker. Appreciate it. I like putting on an earbud and listening while working. Yeah. I know a lot of people do that for sure. Where Miggle. Cool, guys. Well, I should go and go chat with that friend, but you guys have a great night. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be doing at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be doing Sunspire Hard Mode again, and I'll be Nightblade healing that, actually, with Nani. And I think Jess is also helping raid lead that. And we'll probably do something before or after that. So we'll see you guys then. Have a good night, everybody. Oh, okay, I'll do the long goodbye so people have a chance to say goodbye. I always see the chat afterwards too, guys, just so you know. But once I hit end stream, I can still see your chats come in, but I can't respond at that point. All right. Bye. Hope you find your dad.